Advanced one. Ah, here we go. We're live. Hello and welcome everybody to Books to Create Your Future. And tonight I am joined with the amazing Susanna Mittermaier. Hello, Susanna.
Hello, everyone.
And where are you today?
Today, that's a very good question, like adding the today. Today, I'm joining you from snowy Austria.
And this time last week, where were you?
In very sunny Costa Rica.
Riding horses and attending a class with Gary and Dane.
Exactly.
So the reason I invited you on is this amazing book. I know you've got 3 books so far. No, 4 books so far, because we've got Henry as well, haven't we? Yeah. So this was your first book, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Pragmatic Psychology, Tools to Make You Crazy Happy. Do you want to tell me how this book came about?
Sure. I was starting out trying to be a normal psychologist and therapist. For a while in Sweden at the university clinic. And my patients were a diversity of different people, and they had diagnosis of any kind, depression, anxiety, personality disorders, ADHD, OCD, like anything, name it. And I was trained to do whatever, like psychology and therapy work. And I was quite frustrated with the tools that I had learned. I mean, they take you a bit, but then there was this thing in my world where I went, there must be something else out there. There must be a way of approaching people who are different in a more empowering way, because it was all about, you are wrong, let's fix it. And I'm like, but I always had a hard time seeing the problem in their difference. The perspective that was handed to me was, they are wrong, like they're different, hence they're wrong. And I could never really wrap my head around that. So so I started to have conversations, not just like fixing them, but hey, how do you see the world? Like, how is it to be you? And I would suddenly find with a lot of them that they just have a totally different perspective, and they have the world calls it sensitivity, we call it awareness, that they oftentimes have not been acknowledged for and have not gotten any resources to deal with or have ease with it or use it even to their advantage. So I knew I had to find a different way to approach this and be with this. And then I took some days off work. I didn't know why. And then suddenly I realized, oh, those days someone is coming from the States and doing classes. And these were my first access classes. And then I met Gary Douglas, and he's like, hey, what can you bring into the world as a different paradigm for this? And this is exactly what I've been asking for. And now this man says it, and I'm like, this is strange. Seems like magic. And then we had some conversations, and this new approach was born of Pragmatic Psychology. And I just started to write down, I just started to explore, how can I use these tools for me in my life? Because I was my first guinea pig of, okay, what, like anything with money, with body, with relationships, with work, anything. So I just tried them on myself like a crazy person, all the time. And I realized every time it was getting greater and easier, things that I couldn't fathom that they ever could get easier. And then I'm like, wait a second, if it works so well on me, let's see, how can I extrapolate this and apply this to the people that I work with? So I started out with that and made some notes after every session, and was like, oh my God, this, and had this awareness. And it was also exciting. So I made all these notes. And then Gary was asking, are you writing a book? And I'm like, am I writing a book? So I literally asked these pages that I was writing, do you want to become a book? And I got, yes, it was so apparent that the life form of, because everything has its own consciousness, right? So I realized that these pages, they wanted to take on the form of a book, because we have these ideas, and then they can be anything, they can be just for you. They can be notes on your computer. They can be a blog. They can become a podcast. And so asking these life forms, okay, they wanted to become a book. So, and I had no idea what it means to write a book. I'm like, here you go, person who puts it out in the world. And then there were all these parts, and I'm like, oh, and I learned so much. And one of the things that I really learned was that I had to get over being judged, because bringing this very different, if you bring this very different paradigm out there in the world, in a field like that, where everything is very like, this is right and this is wrong. You can do this, you can't do this. I knew that I might be judged a lot. So, but I also, at the same time, while I was aware of probably being judged, I had this much bigger awareness of what future it will create. And I'm like, okay, judgment, creating the future, which is more important for me, and I'm like, like judgments, whatever. Like in comparison to what it will create in the world and what it will create for people, I'm like, why do I even consider this being relevant? So I could perceive what future it would create. And then it was like when the book was published, I'm like, la 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 la. Let's just let's not go on the internet. Let's not and I did this for a long time. I'm like, let's not read any reviews. Let's just pretend nothing happened. And then at one day I'm like, okay. And I'm like, wow, like people, oh my God, thank you. And it's changed. And, anyone who works with people, like my hairdresser said, I found your book and I have it in my hairdressing thingy. And every time I can't deal with people anymore, I just open a page and I'm like, oh God, okay, I can be with people again. And like all these people gave me reviews. I'm like, really? Oh my God. Like you never know who you inspire when you are you. You never know who you are changing when you just go for what you know. And so let's do more of that.
Yeah, and I just want to show the cover of the book again. I mean, look at this. Does that look like a normal clinical psychologist to you? Here she is in the ocean, splashing around in a dress. Look at the smile on your face. My book's still got the price tag on it. So, the two things that really stood out for me with this book, Susanna, I mean, you and I have known each other for a very long time. So, it's been two things. It's been amazing for me watching your journey, as well as to what you've chosen, what you've stepped into, and how you've applied the tools of access to your life, to your business. You now have a whole other, string to your bow now in regards to pragmatic psychology, which we'll come back to. But the two main things that really tickled me in your book, I'd love you to talk about this more, is, do you have a space phobia? Because, again, being a psychologist, it's like, where do you learn about space phobia or superpowers, when you study at university? Handy hint, everybody, you don't. So can you talk about this particular part in the book about the space phobia and how you discovered this?
So usually, I mean, there is a normal space phobia. It's like where people have fear of being in small spaces, but this is not what we talk about. Space phobia, in the way I describe it, is something totally, totally different. It's not about being in small places. It's about, when you become more of you, and you just go, hi world, hi family, hi work, colleagues, mama's in the house, you're like, just, go all peacock on them, and you're like, oh, oh yeah, I feel good. And you start to worry less about people's reactions and judgments. You are more space, like you are more in the world. And we call this being more space. And anything you'd like to change in your life, people, to change problems, people usually are not space, they contract. They go, okay, I have to change my money situation, and let me stress about it, because if I stress about it, then I have enough pressure to push against, and something will happen. Yeah, right. Not working. We all know that. But people contract to change. Well, that's not an approach that works. If you instead expand out and you are like much more spacious around it, your perspective changes, your perspective on the problem changes, and you can transform it into a possibility pretty fast. So that, like, being more spacious in the world, not like contracting, but more relaxed, more spacious, that's so wonderful to discover. In the beginning, people go, oh, wow, I can breathe, I can relax, I feel more free. Feeling free is another word of space, like, oh, I have more space, more freedom. And then there's this moment where people go, oh my God, now it's a bit too much. Now I have a little bit too much freedom. And they look at other people in their lives, their family, their husbands, their wives, their kids, their colleagues, and they go, none of these people is choosing space and freedom. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should go back to being contracted again. And then people go and fill that space with something that creates more contraction. Let's say thinking a lot, worrying a lot, eating more, filling your body with more food, or creating a problem again, so you have something to do, something to worry about. So all of this is like where people go phobic about the space that they're just becoming, and contracting to be normal again. And this is where, with this pragmatic approach, realizing the value of realizing what is true for you and going for it, because that is so vital, especially right now in the world, where if more of us acknowledge what is true for us and like shamelessly go for it and go towards that direction of creating that, actualizing it, we would have a different world pretty soon. So that is like where whatever creates more lightness, whatever creates more space, whatever makes you feel more free, go for it. That's where you get a hint of, oh, that might be something that works for me, that's true for me, that's congruent with me. Yeah.
And the irony is, and I love, because I know you use the peacock in some of your, material and your book, Henry, as well. There's this beautiful peacock on the front of your children's book as well. So, when you look at a peacock, most of us are in awe of how magnificent and majestic the size, the color, the sheer presence. And that peacock isn't, going, oh, what will the doves think? And what will the sparrows think? And it doesn't do that. It just owns that space in all of its glory. It's not proving, it's not getting into any kind of competition or comparing. It just bees. And just what you were saying then, and it's, oftentimes it's when people have judged people for when they are being too happy. Ironically, I find this just astounding that, when you're too loud, or you're too happy, or you're laughing too much, or your life's too good, or, you look too good, but that's often where people will come in and try and judge and cut you down and criticize you. So, and what you're addressing right there is, well, what even if in the face of that, you still held that presence. You didn't make their judgment or their projections or their condemnation of you relevant, and it is a muscle to build. And this is, the tools of access, and especially the tools in this book, are very much about acknowledging the difference that people are, because it's often our difference is the thing that makes us stand out and attracts that. So, and then that leads me to the next topic, which is superpowers. You've put in your book about, disorders as superpowers. So tell me a bit more about that and what you've discovered working with some of your clients.
Yep. There's this thing that went through all the conversations I had with the people with the so-called diagnosis, that those things that seem so disabled oftentimes hold an ability. And there are people who want to know about this, and there are people who do not want to know about this. And it was, of course, as it is not only in psychiatry, all our lives, it's very apparent. There are people who love their limitations and they make it right, and they call this their personality and who they are. That's fine. But there's also the people who go, wait a second, I'm more than that. I'm more than this box that, this expert is trying to put me in and telling me, you have this, you are this, now learn to live with it. That's it, you're welcome. And so the people who are actually questioning that, they're so fun to work with. And what I realized with, all these different so-called, diagnoses is, oh my goodness, the brilliance. And it's not like a horoscope saying, depression means this superpower, anxiety means this superpower, because it's so different to every person. It's like there's a multiplicity, a complexity of capacities that are hiding behind this. And one of them is awareness, like this superpower of being aware, of sensing what's going on, not only in your own body and in your world, but also sensing what's going on with the person next to you, with a person that is far, far away, that you kind of somehow are aware of how they're doing, but you haven't acknowledged that it's them. You think it's yours. And all this confusion that gets created and all the contraction that comes with that. But that is like people realizing that they don't have to shy away from their sensing so much, that this is actually a resource, a treasure box. Oh my goodness, like talk about profit, talk about how you can profit from your own, capacities and from your awareness, because like the whole world thrives on information, right? Like everybody goes on the internet and looks for information about this, about that, and Googles this and checks out that. And if you have an awareness, you outcreate all of these search machines. You know so much more than any machine can ever know. You can sense so much. You can sense so much subtleties that nothing can outcreate that. So you always have an advantage if you're willing to have it. And
and that's where your superpowers, and something you hinted at earlier, and a way that I've heard it talked about within Access Consciousness is, whatever you've decided is your greatest wrongness is actually your greatest strongness.
Yes.
And I think the gift of what you've discovered by working in a clinical situation where people come in with so many labels, like you say, from the experts, so-called experts, that they've come in labeled or diagnosed or whatever. And it's like, maybe sometimes that's applicable, and a lot of the times it isn't, because it is this different way of functioning and being, and I guess interacting with life and with people and the world, that they don't know that they're different until they start to get that external feedback, which is often where that judgment or the wrongness is. So the tools in this book and what pragmatic psychology offers, and advanced pragmatic psychology, are tools for people to actually realize, what if they're not as fucked up as they think they are? What if there's actually amazing superpowers and gifts and capacities? And the gift that you are, Susanna, is that you get that and just turn it 180 degrees and go, let's look at it from this perspective, or let's look at it from this perspective. And then, like you mentioned earlier, whatever makes you feel lighter is a truth for you. And it doesn't mean that somebody else is giving you a name or a label or a diagnosis, that's it. It's stamped and tattooed on you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So you've got, you've also, the other thing I wanted to talk about is you've also created another modality as well as, an access facilitation business. So you've got practitioners as well. You've trained people, is that right, in pragmatic psychology?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a bit about that too?
So, at one point you go, I don't want to be the only one who brings this out into the world. So I started to train people in this, field of pragmatic psychology, and the people are called pragmatic practitioners, and they are right now all over the world working with this in their field. And they have very different fields. Like some of them are teachers, parents, grandparents, or doctors, dentists, massage therapists, any kind of verbal processing therapist, like so many diverse backgrounds, architectures, like really anyone who works with people, including themselves. And they use these tools in their field, in their businesses, with the clients or students, children, grown-ups, groups, wherever they are. And it's incredible. Like, it's so cool to see how their businesses, how their work fields thrive and just everything blooming and becoming so much easier, and they become the authority in their workplace. Like people going, you're different, like you're approaching your work field in a different way. Can we have a conversation? Can I learn from you? So they're becoming the authority, and it's really cool to see. So yes, these people are trained in a couple of classes with Pragmatic Psychology, and I'm thrilled what it creates. And it's so cool how, seeing whether it's schools or businesses or anyone getting in touch with these tools and just going, bam, like going peacock all over. And
Yeah.
oh my God, like whatever my difference is actually an inspiration. It's actually bringing a gift to the world. It's a value. I can profit from it, and the world can profit from who I am.
Yeah, and that just what you tapped into there, the contributions. So this isn't just, so what you're saying is this isn't just for clinical psychologists. This is applicable across the board. Mums, dads, grandma, grandpas, professionals, retired, young, it doesn't matter. These tools can actually be used by absolutely anybody. So you can access this book. I know, is it on Amazon? Is it on Kindle? Where is it available, Susanna?
Anywhere. It just has a different cover now. It has I don't have it. It's just like if you are wondering why it looks different, it has a different dress. So now,
So here's your quiz for today, ladies and gentlemen. So I know you can buy this at Happiness. If you're in the Australasia region, you can buy this at Happiness is just a choice.com. You can access this also on the Access Consciousness website. There's a shop there where you can buy Susanna's book. She's got 4 of them. So we've got Pragmatic Psychology, Advanced Pragmatic Psychology, Fairytale Family, which is a conversation for another day. And what's the name of Henry's, your children's book?
Who is Henry? Is a children's book.
Who is Henry? And maybe that's an interview for another time, because that's also a really beautifully illustrated book with a lovely message. So what classes do you have coming up? If people wondering how to find Pragmatic Psychology as a class, where do they find this information?
They find it on pragmaticpsychology.com. And there's different ones. Some of them you need prereqs, some of them don't. Like there's one coming up I think it's Your Tomorrow in Australia. It's Europe Today. It's 3 calls, pragmatic practitioner, like what we just talked about. And you don't need any prereqs. Like just start to learn more about using these tools out there in the world. And there's also 3-day classes where you need some prereqs, which you can find more information about, or just contact us if you're interested.
And pragmaticpsychology.com, is that your website?
Yeah, and SusannaMittermaier.com. But if you want to have more about this, you can directly go to pragmaticpsychology.com.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. It's always a real pleasure for me to interview people that have taken the Access Consciousness tools and there is literally nowhere, no modality, no person, nothing, no issue on life that these tools cannot contribute more ease and facilitate more clarity with you. So if you want to know more about the tools of Access Consciousness, accessconsciousness.com. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution to the world, Susanna. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as my guest today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating this.
You're welcome, and see you somewhere in the world. I think last time was on a gondola in Venice, last time I saw you live. It's been way too long. So thank you again. Thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll be back again with Steve and Chitisa Bowman with Prosperity Consciousness and Conscious Leadership. So stay tuned for more. Thank you, everybody.